Charlie Dickens, chapter 40. Charlie Dickens, chapter 40, entitled Return. After a few more days, Mary returned from the hospital. It had been stress-related, not surprisingly, and when she pushed the door open, she was horrified by what she saw. A once clean carpet was now littered with crisps and crunched-up cans of lager, and a bottle of beer was emptying its contents slowly all over her favourite white rug. She was surprised and annoyed to see Uncle Keith looking comatose in her armchair, and he was snoring contentedly. And a pile of ash was balanced precarily on a glass ashtray and looking like it could topple over at any moment. Her helper touched her arm in sympathy. Mary was usually as timid as a mouse, but this time she positively roared. "Get up," she shouted so loudly that all of the pictures on the walls shook. "Don't worry yourself," said the nurse, who was looking worried, as she held her arm protectively. Keith stirred slowly like an old bear that had been hit by a tranquilizer dart. He still had crisps on his chin and he was tempted to lick them, but he knew the time wasn't right. "Oh, hello, Mary," he said, rubbing his eyes and his runny nose. "Nice to see you again," he said, with a big fake yellow smile. "It's not nice to see you," said Mary, getting uncharacteristically angry. The nurse held her arm tightly. The last thing that she wanted was another stressful episode. Keith coughed and spluttered, and he was not used to being spoken to that way. But he knew that he had overstayed his welcome. "I will have to find another person to help me out," he thought selfishly. He had no conscience. Keith struggled to fasten his belt over his expanding stomach, and as he stood up, he saw Charlie standing in the hallway. Charlie knew a rat when he saw one, and he moved away to let him pass. And as the front door slammed, the house seemed to breathe a large sigh of relief. Charlie ran to his mum, and he fell into her arms, and he was so pleased to see her again, and he felt guilty that in his mind her illness was all his fault. "Don't worry, love, I'll be all right," she said, lovingly stroking his hair. "I think it's time for a cuppa," his mum said, and the nurse excused herself. "I'll do it, Mum," said Charlie. "You have a good sit down, you deserve it," he said kindly. Mary was pleased to sit in her favourite comfy armchair, but before she did, she brushed away all of the accumulated breadcrumbs and biscuits, which Keith had been happy to sit on. They sat and drank tea together, and his mum told him that her love for him had pulled her through. Charlie nearly began crying, and Mary reached over and she held his hand. "Don't worry," she said, "we need to make the most of our time together," as she said as she sipped at her tea. "Life is precious and short," she said. "We cannot waste another minute." Charlie knew that she was right, but he didn't know what to say, so he decided not to say anything.